think you all know me. I'm Patrizia Morgante, in charge of communications at UISG. I also have my teammates here, Miriam and Navoika. This is our first webinar that we hold to prepare for the first international meeting for communication for religious life that will be held in November. During this meeting, we're going to especially invite the people, consecrated and lay people that work in communications for religious life. But before this meeting, we're going to have several meetings, several webinars and courses to prepare ourselves for that meeting, but especially to strengthen our tools in communications. One day I participated to the presentation of this book, Religious Marketing, that I'm going to show you again. And it really had an impact because Carlos was very critical of communication. So I said, I love this. It allows me to open my horizons. I am so focused on communications in religious life. This is wonderful for me. So welcome, Carlos. Today, he allows us to get out of our comfort zones and to look at things from a different perspective. I also want to welcome Gabriel Lopez Santamaria, representing the Catholics online. Allow me to highlight you. Carlos has allowed us to meet, no, Gabriel allowed us to get to know Carlos, but with Carlos and the Association and Mission, we're going to begin tomorrow a course of 5 months to prepare ourselves to evangelize on social networks. We'll show you more about that later and tell you some more. I now give the floor to my colleague, Navoika, so she can introduce Carlos.
I'm sorry, Navoika. Yes, works. Good evening or good morning, everyone. My name is Navoika. I'm the assistant at the UISG Communication Office. And before we dive in, I would like to just say a few words about our today's guest, our speaker, Carlos Luna. So he is a lay Dominican entrepreneur and enthusiast of creativity and marketing. He is a researcher and marketing consultant for various religious organizations and institutes, as well as a promoter of religious marketing as discipline in the church. He is the author of the book Fundamentals of Religious Marketing that we're going to discuss further on. He's also a director of Reinspira International Religious Marketing Congress and also works as the strategic creative director at Be a Dreamer, which is an agency specializing in social and educational marketing. And beside that, he is also a postgraduate lecturer at EISIC University, the University of Cantabria, and other various business schools. So once again, welcome, Carlos. Thank you so much for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to share with you all this new discipline that it works for.
Tú puedes hablar español, ¿eh?
You can speak Spanish. Yes, I will do that.
It works just for help the church and our organizations to have more relationship with the people that don't want to hear us and hear the Jesus message. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much. Since Patricia contacted me, it was really a desire, a wish that I had with much enthusiasm to try to share this discipline with you that I've been discussing and sharing for many years, because I think that it helps us to try to incarnate and live the Evangelii Gaudium in our institutions. Why do I think that this helps us? Because it especially gives us a change of perspective and a methodology for work. I think that this is important. Otherwise, oftentimes we enthusiastically welcome apostolic letters, apostolic exhortations. We read them and we say, oh, how interesting, how beautiful what we're being invited to. But then we go back to our communities and we don't know how to do this. And from something really exciting, it becomes a load. And we end up doing what we've always done. My idea today is to share with you 2 or 3 reflections and to tell you what religious marketing is all about. And the idea is to respond to your questions, your concerns. I think that is the most interesting part. I'm going to start sharing my screen. If I speak too quickly, please let me know, especially the interpreter. And if you cannot see my slides, please let me know as well. It has happened to me. So let us begin. Well, why am I here? Well, I'm here because since I was little, I wanted to get involved in marketing and advertisement. And then at the teenage, the adolescent age, I was close to the church, and I always had an inner feeling about the fact that we did not know how to sell ourselves, quote unquote, sell ourselves well as a church. Many people did not know us deeply. And sometimes the church and our institutions, congregations, sometimes they don't know how to get to people. So I started investigating and I started working at this 5 years ago. Well, more, I think 7 years ago. I think it was the first Congress for religious marketing. And what used to be a researcher or a person trying to see how this could be done, I kind of emerged. I surfaced and they started to know me, and I started writing this manual to help the church. Before getting into what this is all about, I'd like to share 3 reflections that I've been thinking about lately. Look at what this passage says. The paralyzed man healed completely. It says the paralyzed man healed completely. Then he stood in front of everyone. He took his stretcher and went home glorifying God. Look at this other one, this other encounter. Jesus meets with some blind people and asks them, do you think I can do this? And they say, yes, Lord. So he touched their eyes and says, based on your faith, let it be done. And their eyes were open. Jesus told them, do not tell anyone. But when they left, the people around them, they spoke about him throughout the area. But if we look at more encounters of Jesus with people in the gospel, Something similar is happening. Instantly, the ears opened up, the speech defect disappeared, and Jesus asked to not tell anybody, but the more he insisted, the more they published it. They were speaking very surprisingly. What do these three passages have in common? There are several things, but to not waste time, there's one that strikes me especially. They all, after a meeting with Jesus, even they even disobey his indications. They do not stop talking about him. They don't stop talking about the experience they just had. This is a reflection that I do a lot. Like, who have I met? Who have I encountered? If my reaction to that encounter is not evangelizing, if my reaction to that encounter is not to talk about God constantly, about my experience, that God of Jesus did, God of the gospel. If all those who have met, their reaction is to try to get into a relation with a society that doesn't want to listen, how is it that we, well, I ask myself, I've come across an intellectual establishment. Have I encountered an incredible emotion, or have I met with that God, that personal Jesus? The second question is another invitation that I do to myself. I think we should try not only to update my experience of encounter with God, but also become enthusiastic again with evangelization, to realize again that this is part of our identity as congregations, of movements. It is part of my identity, of my purpose, that is evangelization, and redevelop my enthusiasm about it. And lastly, something that I've been saying a lot lately, fight against the evangelizing procrastination. Many organizations in the church have this. It seems like it's the eternal pending thing. We have many schools to attend, a lot of Samaritan churches that need to be established in society, a lot of church in camps so that we have to try to update, but we forget the part about evangelization to the one who's distant, to the atheist, to those who never want to approach the institutions. We always leave that behind. That's the eternal pending issue. It's a personal impression that I wanted to share with you. Why am I sharing this reflection? Because I think that religious marketing can help us in these three dimensions. So the first one starts from you to update yourself, encounter God again, and update that experience of God depends on you. But as to the other two, religious marketing can help us. In the meantime, the number of atheists continues to grow. This is information from Spain, and there are even people who, for Christmas, they celebrate the birth of Santa Claus. Young people nowadays celebrate the birth of Santa Claus because nobody has told them that a Jesus exists, and the grandparents are dying. So we either start taking an attitude of that church that goes forth, or this is not going to work. Of course, when I talk about religious marketing, the first thing that people think about is, woof, marketing. Oh, we're going to sell. We're going to deceive. We're going to cheat. It's true that marketing has a very bad reputation, but as everything, it is a tool that can be good or bad. You can do good marketing or bad marketing. You can do good accounting. That is a discipline we've also integrated into the church that comes from the business world, or you can do very bad accounting and create a lot of damage. You can do good institutional communication. That's another discipline that comes from the business world, or you can do it very badly and make a lot of damages. So what happens? Marketing is identified as a sales strategy. If we understand it like that, marketing has nothing to do with our church, nothing to do with our religious life, our orders, congregations, and movements, because we don't have to sell anything. Because we say that faith is a gift. Now, if we understand marketing as a strategy of empathy to get into the other shoes, in the shoes of the distant one, the atheist, the one who does not want to approach the church, if I step into the shoes of the other to develop a strategy that is not a sales or communications a strategy, rather a strategy of relation with him, perhaps this may open new doors and new ways of intertwining that relationship with people. If we go to the sources of what we oftentimes teach about marketing in college, look at this definition that follows. It says marketing is the strategy, is politics, strategies, and techniques and means aimed at, it doesn't say sale, it says aimed at discovering and analyzing needs in order to obtain a product, a content, a message, introduce it, and keep it in society. That's what many of our institutions and the church in general were not capable of doing, keeping them in the society. This product has to be appropriate as far as shape, quality, quantity, place, and price at the adequate moment. The current time, you have to be able to inculturate it to the culture, subcultures. But with what objective? It doesn't say to sell, it doesn't say to make money. It says to meet a need continuously in this person. Marketing as such is not selling, it's not based on sale, it is based on the needs. And if we apply it to the religious environment, we would say, in order to satisfy a need, what is this need? The need for transcendence that every human being has, just because of being human. It's a need for transcendence. Now, a very quick summary. In this manual, I define religious marketing. This is a marketing definition, but in the manual, I define religious marketing strategies to discover concerns of spirituality in society that allow us to pay attention to the gospel. So to not extend myself, I wanted to share a brief summary about why marketing and not communication. Look at this pyramid. It can represent any of our institutions, movements, congregations. At the top, there are some institutional and corporate objectives.
Misión, visión, valores, ideario.
That are inspired by our mission, vision, ideals. Then there's an intermediate level, that's the strategy. Long-term decisions are made here. It's the strategy. The strategy is to choose a path, and I cannot change that every day. Otherwise, I'll be all over the place. So I choose a strategy, the path to reach those objectives that appear above. And below, there's one part in the organization that is the tactics, the marketing tactics. More specifically, this is operational marketing. These are short-term decisions. In the intermediate, the middle level strategies, there are strategies of all sorts, pastoral strategies, growth strategies, capturing all sorts of strategies. Since we're talking about marketing, I'm going to talk about the marketing strategies. And the same thing happens with the tactics, short-term decisions. There are tactics there as well as far as human resources, financing. But here we're going to talk about marketing. So the audience, people, society, the society we need to serve as institution, the people that we want to relate to are at the very bottom of this pyramid. And they are going to judge our institution, our charism, our way of being, of relating with society through what? Through different variables. Marketing, traditionally, I mean, in religious marketing, I speak of more variables, not only these four, but in traditional marketing, we talk about these four variables. So what happens? In the church, we've always identified evangelization based on two variables, essentially. The testimony, we're going to evangelize through our testimony, and we're going to awaken questions in the other person, interest, curiosity, etc. And the other one is the variable of communications. What happens? We are trying to resolve the challenge of evangelization only from one part of the problem. Why? Because we place all our hopes on the variable communication. How do I communicate with people? So years go by, decades go by, and we see that we are not achieving all the results we'd like to achieve. So we start seeing different temptations. The first temptation is to think that evangelization is going to be solved by iron. What does it mean? We start getting technical equipment, the best equipment. We put cameras in the churches because the iron, the hardware and equipment is going to help us connect with people. I'm not saying to not have those, but it's not enough. So that we get to the second temptation, which is the more channels I have, the better. Of course, those who think that communication is the key try to solve the problem based on that. When I go to an institution, they start asking me, should I open TikTok or not, or Facebook? Because the more channels I have, the more audience, possibly more coverage, more people that I reach, and more often I can reach people, I can communicate. But let us recall that what we are seeking is not to communicate, is to establish a relationship with the one who doesn't want to listen to me. I can communicate, but since he doesn't want to listen to me, it's water and oil. So we have to go beyond this variable. We see that the channels don't work either. So the third temptation, no, the key to resolve this problem is to reconnect as an institution, as a movement, as an order, is to adjust the language to the current times. So we make an effort with good designers, but we see that we continue without reaching the people. So there's another temptation. No, the key is not the language, it's the message. What are we going to tell to these people? So we make an effort to change the message. And so years and decades go by and we do not achieve all the results that we'd like. As long as we continue placing all our hopes on communications, we know what results we've obtained. We're going to have to do better. What marketing says is Use more variables to get into a relation with people. Use more variables to awaken this deep desire for transcendence. It's almost impossible. If we are honest with ourselves, it is almost impossible to awaken a desire for transcendence. It's a deep desire. You can awaken a desire to purchase a perfume, a drink, or to go somewhere, but awaken the desire for that, yes, but a desire for transcendence, it is impossible to achieve that with only the communications variable. Perhaps it may be easier to establish a relationship with people if we use other variables. Which ones? The first one is a new strategy of products, of contents, designed only for those who have distanced themselves, not our sacraments, catechesis, or pastoral. Those are designed for those who are already within. Secondly, a new strategy of distribution and design new places beyond our parishes, our schools, where a person who distanced himself that would never approach a parish may feel comfortable by approaching a new place. It could be offline, but also online. And then we have another variable, which is the price. What religious marketing says is that we should design all the itineraries for the products and contents for the distant ones based on the price that is the price that a non-believer is going to have to cover to pay to go from non-belief to belief. And those itineraries, that order of contents, has to be suggested by our ear. We cannot tell ourselves through our own teaching, our books that we've studied at university. They have to tell us. For all of this, there are two ways to reason, and I'd like to conclude with this. There's a rationale, a reasoning that is more aimed at sales. And I invite you, as you listen to me, I invite you to think whether this in your communities and your offices and your communications offices and your meetings, at what level of reasoning are you? Are you at the sales level, or are you at the level of a church that goes forth, that is more geared to marketing? Look at the differences. The sales reasoning, the starting point, like tomorrow you have to organize an event, the motto of the parish or the cohabitation at the beginning of the school, your congregation, whatever action, whatever event, the starting point when you get together to work, the starting point is my organization, me, my cares and my values, what my foundress or founder said. That is the starting point. The one who thinks about sales thinks that the key element to have a certain success, a word that I don't like to use, is the offer. What am I going to give to the parents in my schools, to the kids, the students? What offer, what product? That's the key element, and it has to be well designed. It has to be cared for. And you place all your energies on the product. And the means to achieve the result is to announce it, communication, distribution. Where am I going to offer it? What for? For an end, that is sales. How many of us, when we have an event and experience, the first question we ask ourselves is, how many people have come? We are reasoning as based on sales. How many have purchased us? Look at the marketing rationale, be that religious, and that reasoning for that church that goes forth that the Pope invites us to. It says, the starting point is no longer myself, my organization, my values, supposedly it's logical to start from that, because if you don't, you could become something else. But the logic, the rationale is different. The starting point is the people, the sheep. If you start from the sheep, I recognize it as sacred, as essential, my purpose. The key element is no longer what am I going to say, do, rather what motivations, what prejudices, what obstacles, or what is raising doubts, and what would move, what would be distancing ourselves. Yes, this is about, once I discover all of this, I go to the means. And at that point, I'm going to design a product with a price, with a new distribution, new places, and new communication customized, and not for the audience, but the motivations. So that the objective is not how many have come, but how much you've satisfied or met his need for transcendence. And that's what the book talks about. If you'd like, we move into questions. But basically, I wanted to focus on this religious marketing. Thank you, Carlos, truly. Although I feel a little discouraged, we know a lot, but listening to you, I realize that we are very focused on ourselves in our communication, focused on my organization, my message. Our work is to help accompany ourselves and others to search and find meaning in life, so they may meet in this space for transcendence and nourish the spiritual part without losing touch with reality. I think I see that there's already a question which you can read in the chat box. I'm going to read the question so that it can be translated.
So in English, Marilu. Is there any interim strategy for evangelization that mobilizes the members of the faith community who are in relationship with those who do not wish to hear the message? We are barely reaching these people, and this is the point of Carlos' reflection. Voy a ver la segunda.
Now to the second question. How is it convenient to design the conservation with a religious client to make them get out of the box in order to create products for a communication that goes forth? I think we recognize the sheep from the management teams, of course, with internal communication, and they do not imagine the audience of those who are detached or who are distant. Would you like to resonate with these 2 points, and then we have others? I think that the first and most important point is, well, as I listen to these 2 questions, I think of 2 things. The first one is stop thinking that we know what people need, because that places us again on our shore and not on their shore. We read our sociological studies and we know that we are in the postmodern society, liquid society, lack of meaning. And that's what boxes us in on our shore. We have to start from there. The second point is, and I say this in many conferences, and I think it's not that well accepted. It says, stop thinking about needs, because that makes it impossible for us to connect with the sheep and the one who's distant. What does this mean? Of course, you talked about the need to feel. Yes, people need meaning, but that is, oh, what am I going to do with this now? It's huge. This type of need is tremendous. It's the other day, for instance, let's see if I can be more concrete. I was offering a formation session, and a priest said, in my parish, we're going to create the product, a space for listening, because we've identified, we've seen that people need to feel heard, listened to. Yes, of course, there's a lot of loneliness and need to be heard. And you're thinking about the product, a listening group. Look at the reasoning. I, parish, starting point, organization, key element, offer. I create a listening group going through looking at this need that I suppose the people have, and I'm going to announce it and see how many people come. The issue is not what people need. If we go down to the reasoning of a church that goes forth, it's not the need that we need to pay attention to. It is the motivation that would make them meet the need of feeling heard. Listen to what I said. I may need a car, but what moves me to purchase this car is, for instance, feel the coolest in the neighborhood, feel like the most popular one. That's why I'll buy a sports car. My motivation to meet a need for transportation is to feel that I have self-esteem. So you have to work, but another person may try to meet that need to feel heard, but the concern that would bring this person close is to feel again that this person is useful, important in life. There are two ways of communicating now. You can communicate a product. You put an ad in your parish, new listening group for listening, or you can communicate the need. If you feel that you need to be heard, we offer you this group, this listening group, or you can touch the motivation, feel useful, feel important, feel that you are worth it. Thanks to this space that we're giving to you, connect more with what the sheep carries within. So, second key point, forget talking about needs, but more about motivations. And the third one is to distinguish the groups by segments. In these questions, you mentioned the distant people. There are many types of distant people. So the interreligious customer, or the one who's searching, or the one with a desire for transcendence that is dormant or active. There are many of those. So I would start working on a more behavioral segmentation to faith. And let me explain. Traditionally, we've segmented our offer based on a socio-demographic variable, that is age. Catechesis for children, catechesis for young people, for adults, and for third age. Now we have to segment by different attitudes or degrees of openness toward transcendence. The one who does not ask the question, the one who raises the question but will never ask it based on Jesus, the one who raises this question with our Catholic God but lives the faith very timidly, and the one who asks this question once, but then left, the ones who bounced. So we should work based on that segmentation as well, that fragmentation. Then, well, if we do that, that will enable a conversation and this the smell of sheep, as I was mentioning. Well, I don't know whether I answered or raised more questions, but I will not extend myself. Otherwise, I'm just going to go on and on. I think it is very helpful because for some of us, language is kind of something that is foreign. There's another question here. How can we develop contents for religious life, dealing with coexistence in a society that is hyper-connected? While you're thinking about this, I need that repeated. How can we prepare or produce contents for religious life, keeping in mind that we are in a reality that is hyper-connected, and we want to talk about cohabitation? While you think for a while, I want to add one question. I think the model that you've presented is a key issue. The model, sales or marketing. The marketing model begins with this attitude of listening. So my question is, how can we listen to our audience? And while you think about both answers, I'd like to invite people to ask questions through the chat, but we can also take some time for live questions, direct questions. It's a little more human. We're not that many, so we can do that. Just to use raise your hand, the electronic hand raising in reactions. If you wish to, you can do that, not just questions, but also comments. Carlos, you have the floor. One thing about the first question, what's the objective of those contents? Well, let's ask Neusa. Neusa is here. If she wants to speak, I'll give her the floor. She can. How can we develop contents, but with what objective? To attract vocations, transmit the gospel, awaken this transcendent questions, the atheists. What is the objective? Well, good afternoon from Brazil. We are having a conversation between religious life that lives in a community with a great conflict with the hyper-connected society. How can we make that connection, this conjunction, so that that audience will get out of its individual environment toward a collective area, and the experience, the production of messages can become more public, but with no conflict between community and society? Very good question. I think that we have to address it. I mean, there is no single answer to this. I think it's a strategy for the long term. It's a long-term strategy that, as a matter of fact, the religious life has to create this strategy. It has to work on prejudices and the obstacles that it has, the audience, at the same time as motivations that the people have in that moment, and establish a parallel between what is being experienced in religious life and what the other person has on his shore. This is used a lot in communications to sell products of any sort. But Jesus did that as well. Jesus would deeply look at what concerned that person, what that person had. Why are they criticizing you? How many husbands do you have? See what is keeping your mind busy, what is in your heart. Establish a parallel with religious life so that they can see that there's not that much distance. It's not water and oil. And at the same time, in parallel, which we don't do, work on the prejudices, so what slows you down. So on the one hand, I motivate more to get closer, to approach religious life and community, to kind of brush on communities. But at the same time, I have to address prejudices and the defense mechanisms. And it can be done. It can be achieved, of course. You were asking me how we can listen to the audience. Well, I think that the trap is in the question. It's not about how to listen to the audience. It's how can you smell the sheep, and within that there's a part that is to listen, but another part is to smell, to brush on, to move, situate myself for where my audience is located, and it goes beyond the listening. But in this book, the first chapter is devoted to explain what religious marketing is and what marketing is. And the second chapter, of course, if I want to follow that, the reasoning of my starting point is the sheep, I devote my, I focus on smelling like sheep. What does it mean? It means to know deeply everything that the atheist, the reject, the one who was there and who left, those four profiles, what concerns him, what moves him, what stops him, his search process, up to 3 processes. So going back to how we do this, well, we don't have too much time, but there is a process and it's very simple. I'm going to tell you, but look, the first step, very quickly, I don't have it here, but anyway, the first step is to decide what audience I'm going to address by charism, by weakness. I think I'm going to go to 40, 50 years old, and I'm going to go to the ones who bounced out, the ones who were in my congregations, parishes, and schools, and who left. So I reach these, and sociodemographically I reach that age. So the first stage is what? To invite them. We create a focus group, one meeting with that audience. I am convinced that you are thinking, how can you bring an atheist, the guy who left the church, how are you going to invite him? Well, I bet my left arm that if you invite people that you know, through affection, look, I'm doing a project for my order, for whatever, would you mind coming to a meeting, a quality meeting to study? I bet that they will come. They will come. And you'll have a group of 12 people where the goal is to launch and discover what? Not needs, rather motivations and obstacles. What stops them? That's what is done in a quality meeting. I did a lot of those in my profession as marketer. Now I've done a few. You extract the deep insights that are stopping them, and you extrapolate that into the questionnaire. The questionnaire, on a scale from 1 to 5, you say, well, the church is boring and ancient. Where did you get that idea from? That thought is from the focus group. Well, value from 1 to 5, you extrapolate it with any questionnaire, with Google. There are very many tools. You extrapolate it and you'll have a representative sample. And from there, you group your answers by type of sheep, of those who are distant. And you're going to get some types of sheep and you can't say I'm going to those who were there and then left. No, there are many segments within that. The nostalgic bouncer, the childish one, the angry one. I mean, you will see many profiles. And from there, you start defining the product, the price, communication by extracting 4 types, whatever. But I don't want to extend myself. I don't know if I've answered, but there are very many other techniques to listen, many ways. These are basic. There's a hand over there. Okay, Francisco. There's also a question from Rosanna in the chat box, if you can read it. And then we give the floor to Francisco Castillo, who can unmute himself. We're not hearing you, Francisco. What's wrong? My name is Francisco, I'm a Capuchin friar. My question is more as a request. I loved this reflection, these concepts, going from digital marketing to where we work, to the religious part. I am serving in communications. I'm in charge of communications for the order. My service goes beyond more to the part of the friars. It's more about communication or serving this part. And it was very difficult to find literature, I mean, I have materials on digital marketing, on communications in general, but literature to understand or reflect on how to establish a strategy for us religious, it's kind of scarce. I don't know whether there are possibilities to have some sort of literature sources to look for strategies, projects, definitions, concepts about how we can value a project for the religious context. If it exists, I would love to have access to it. In fact, Francisco, there's not a lot of literature. Well, not to talk about my book, but as a matter of fact, I've been researching this for many years, and it's quite difficult. In the US, there are some things, but they speak more about communications and digital marketing. Because, of course, there's a system there that every church has to support itself, and they look for customers, clientele. So there's not a lot, but for example, in my book, I don't talk about digital marketing that much. In the chapter about communication, yes, I do, but some basic concepts. This is more about developing strategies for religious marketing. I'm not aware of them, really. I'm not familiar with them, except for my book, Foundations for Religious Marketing, that you can get through Amazon. I don't know, but if you're very interested, we can stay in touch. And if I find something that I can let you know with no issues. What is my book called? Well, Foundations for Religious Marketing. I'm going to look for this and I'll put it in the chat. There was a question from Rosanna. I'm interested. Carlos, what do you suggest to communicators who want to carry forward this new way of working, marketing, religious marketing, but it's uphill for this to be understood? Is this a process of change? Yes, this is a process of change. It's a new discipline that is at the service of evangelization in the church. And I think that in 15 years, I hope that in 15 years, all the institutions and congregations will have a profile of religious marketing that will have to be in a dialogue with institutional communications that already exist, or the institutional communications will have to recycle itself. and know more about segmentation, knowledge of the customer, product design, the places, prices, itineraries. I think it is a process. Now it's a moment of change. So what do I suggest? Training, formation, like this course that we're beginning. There's going to be a module for religious marketing. But what is most important, I think, is to first come to know the discipline, love it, and just dive into it and try it. Just launch into it. Because if you dive into it, and if you reason with that reasoning of a church that goes forth, that is putting the sheep in the first place and not myself, my cares, and my ideals. If you put the sheep first, that will lead me. I'm going to always get it because I'm going to incarnate the church and the mission of evangelizing. I'm going to take risks. And when I take risks, I also evangelize myself. When I don't take risks and I stay on the I, myself, my organization, my values, my ideals, and I continue doing what I did last year, that doesn't complicate my life, but doesn't evangelize me either. It doesn't put me in a crisis. It doesn't help me to grow. So to be trained, formed, get to know it, love it, and just dive into it and just try. I think. Sorry, Carlos, we are running out of time. I don't want to take time away from you or the participants, but I think that Donna's question is very interesting. I'm going to ask you very quickly in Spanish. She says that as a communicator, she feels with a lot of pressure from the fundraising department to tell stories about the sisters. So she feels we need like a cultural change as we listen to you. She feels pressured to communicate stories about the sisters. Yes, to have some puns, I suppose. I mean, stories also have an impact emotionally. So how can we begin a conversation with the teams to make a change? Right. Well, ultimately, very good question, because again, we continue in that reasoning. What I do and I talk about it, the sales reasoning. On the contrary, it's you, what stops you, what occupies you on your day-to-day, and then how that connects with what concerns me as well. It's talking about people are concerned with and not what I do. So how can we, well, honestly, I don't have the answer. Honestly, this is an organizational transformation. I'm not an expert in organizational transformation about how to change mindsets, the inertia of people. I contribute to that transformation through formation, but transforming that manner of thinking to change that attitude of I tell what I do to talk about what matters. Well, that's a path on a day to day. I mean, and then there's an important matter that emerged here. Religious marketing is not fundraising. It is not finding vocations, capturing vocations. It's not religious marketing applied to fraternities or movements or groups. No, that is sports marketing. That's what Real Madrid does. They do marketing to capture people that are attached to their seal. No, religious marketing is to evangelize those who are distant. It's not fundraising. Fundraising is fundraising. It's a different discipline. Religious marketing is evangelization. Well, Carlos, thank you so much. I think the objective for today was just an appetizer. I don't know how to say it in Spanish. It's just an appetizer to be hungry to deepen this topic. But many of these topics are will be developed during the course. Now I give the floor to Gabriel so he can briefly present the course that will begin tomorrow. But the registration is open because the material is being uploaded into Thinkific, so people can then listen to it subsequently. This course has a price because it's organized to train at a more advanced level for communicators who work at the service of the church and religious life. So welcome, Gabriel, you have the floor. Thank you, Patricia. The course, as you said, will begin tomorrow, February 17th. I will quickly share the contents and some of the teachers. Tomorrow we begin with the president of the Italian Catholic Associations to talk about the foundations of digital evangelization. Then the Dicastery of Communication will talk about spiritual life. Then Maria Cabrera from Spain will talk about personal remark. Then Chica Valladares, a religious, very active on TikTok and Twitter. The keys of the digital missionaries and strategies for growth and sustainability. That will be a religious woman, a missionary in Korea, then religious marketing with our friend Carlos on March 31st. And then we have social networks with text contents by Valladares, then photographic content, video contents, basically YouTube and other networks such as TikTok, social networks, so with audio, monetization and social networks. That is, myself will have a couple of sessions and we'll talk about some things that emerge today, like listening techniques through social networks and fundraising and communication. So whomever is interested in that, we can meet in June. And then we have the last point, 2 sessions to create a social media plan, a plan to work with everything that we've learned to integrate this into a communications plan. I will leave, I will put on the chat the email address and the WhatsApp number in case you have some difficulties. When you register, the course has a total cost of $350 for the 4 months that it lasts. Every session is going to be of 2.5 hours of theoretic and practice. And as Patricia said, they will be recorded for those who cannot attend live. So we begin tomorrow and we hope to see you all there. Thank you. If I may add something, as looking at all the general course of this course, I think it's an extremely complete course. The good thing, and I'm saying this not because I'm part of this course, but as a formator in other schools and masters or other things, it is not the same to do an isolated course, one for fundraising, another one for personal brand, but then having a thread that runs through it with all the contents organized. This structures your mind. It generates a more solid mental structure to make the adequate decisions. Now, as I looked at this quick summary that you made, I think it is a very complete course. It's thorough. And I encourage you to attend, to be with us, because I think you're going to learn a lot. If we gave you an appetizer today during the religious marketing session, we're going to get into creating products creatively, everything that is paid by the one who doesn't believe to become a believer, we're going to get more into the matter in my module, but as far as the rest of the modules, I also encourage you to attend. Thank you so much, Gabriel and Carlos, for encouraging us. And UISG has set this priority this year as we go toward the international meeting. We aim at increasing our skills in this context because we cannot do communications just by goodwill. We also need knowledge, tools, and also we need to update this backpack of tools. So thank you, Carlos. And beyond the course, perhaps we can have another meeting with you to deepen some or other aspects. And I also want to thank the translator and all those who participated. You will find the recording on our webpage and our channel, and then you can share it. So thank you. I just want to remind you that the theme, the umbrella theme that accompanies throughout the year is communicating religious life with everything that Carlos provoked. Communication is a bit in a plan, in a thinking as smelling like sheep that is a little more extensive. So thank you so much to all of you. Thank you.